Hi, I'm Angela Cavanaugh, the Executive Director of CAI. I would like to welcome all attendees and thank the Board of Directors and the CAI team for today's program. A few announcements. This Friday, we will have our next session of the HOA Feud. On Tuesday, August 25th, our next session of the Fast Trivia. And next Wednesday, August 26th, will be our next Wednesday webinar. A few housekeeping rules. All participants will be muted today. Please type your questions into the question box and state the panelist's name that you would like the question directed to. If you need a certificate for manager's credits, please email Jackie at Jacqueline, Jaclyn, at CAI-NJ.org. Just a note that you must be in attendance for the entire presentation to qualify for a certificate. I would now like to turn it over to Brianna Walsh of the Membership Committee. Brianna?
Thank you, Angela, and good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, rather. My name is Brianna Walsh, and I'm the Vice President of Closest Energy Design, but most importantly, I am the Chair of the CAI New Jersey Membership Committee. And as a liaison to the Membership Committee, I wanted to remind all of you of some of the benefits your CAI membership has to offer. So whether you are a member up for renewal or a potential member joining us for an educational opportunity, we feel your company will benefit from your investment in CAI and yourself. So for our homeowner leaders out there, CAI members have access to CAI New Jersey's ADR program, which is a cost-effective way to fulfill your association's legal obligations. As we know, the best community associations have the best boards. They're educated, knowledgeable, and prepared to lead their communities successfully. So help your board succeed. CAI New Jersey provides a robust library of content for community leaders, as well as ongoing virtual learning opportunities. Access to industry leaders such as accounting, engineering, insurance, and legal. And not to mention, you can have 3 to 15 board members and key volunteers added at one low price. Onto our managers and management companies. You have access to print online directories of industry leaders to help your communities navigate these unparalleled times. You can earn continuing education credits at a free or discounted rate, and you can utilize our 2020 virtual trade show video catalog, which will help you navigate through all of our top industry professionals. And not to mention our business partners, can't forget those. You have the continued opportunity to build your brand, committed to helping you with platforms such as online Zoom seminars and providing the necessary education to support your business. You also have access to networking opportunities with other industry leaders to connect virtually, some of which Angela mentioned before. I hope to see you there. And we also want to remind you again not to miss the 2020 virtual trade show, where your company can be featured on our website for up to 6 months, along with our other industry professionals. And I know I said our website, I mean CAI website, but you know, as you know, the membership committee feels such passion for CAI. So if you have any questions regarding becoming a member, opportunities in which you think people could join membership, potential members, or just general information about the renewal process, I'll put my information in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me or any of the other hardworking members of CAI or our talented membership committee. So thank you, stay members, and help us grow.
Thank you, Brianna. Okay, everyone. So first up will be Tony Nardone, CEO of Cooperative Property Management. Tony?
Good afternoon, everybody. Tony Nardone, Corner Property Management. Hope all is well. I am also the treasurer on the executive board for CAI, and I'm glad to be here this afternoon. Thank you. Angela, we're going to do all the introductions, or you want me to get right into the?
No, go right ahead.
All right. So today we're going to talk about managers and recruiting and how do we interact with one another. So my experience over the years have been that most managers have type A personalities. We're always on the go. We always have to think 3 steps ahead. And how do we communicate when recruiting or working with vendors or working with our homeowners and homeowner leaders? The number one piece of advice is stop and listen. A lot of people in this industry tend to want to talk over one another, and they feel as though whoever's the loudest person wins, and that's not the case. Many years of training and talking to people, you learn that when you listen, when you stop and you listen, you can hear what people are saying, and you can better address the situations at hand. and address their concerns in a more professional manner. As managers, we have to remember that we're there to service the clients, and in doing so, we want to make sure that we hear all of their issues and address them accordingly. Oh, my phone. Sorry about that. In any event, that's one of the things that we want to do as managers is we want to take a step back and really listen to our homeowner leaders. And body language. Body language is a big one for me. How many managers out there or people who live in communities see this from the manager? Constantly doing this with the phone, looking away, fidgeting, staring up in the sky. We see that a lot. And when I'm talking to somebody, if I see that, that tells me that they're not listening and they're kind of checked out and they're focusing on something other. And then what happens often is I'll get a call half hour, an hour later saying, hey, we were talking about that. I don't remember what you said. You don't remember because you were doing this with the phone, you were looking up in the sky and you were focusing on everything but the task at hand. What I tell people is put everything away, look direct in the eye and communicate with someone. Listen to what they're saying. Take notes if you have to. I walk around with a book. Maybe it's a little old fashioned nowadays, but I walk around with a book and I take notes and I write things down so that when I have to go back and reflect, I can reflect on the conversation and I can act accordingly. So between the body language and paying attention to vendors, property managers, homeowners, that builds for much success in this industry. Those are my key points on in just recruiting in general, whether I'm recruiting a manager, a vendor that I want to work with, or maybe it's an existing vendor that I work with. I just want to focus on them and focus on what their needs are and what's a good fit and what's not a good fit. Or the project's too big or the project's too small. So even when I'm talking with vendors, I'm listening to what they're saying so that I can right size everybody for the right project. Angela, are we taking questions? Can't hear you. Can't hear you, Angela. 1 minute.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay,
yes.
Sorry about that. So I believe you already touched on this, but just to reiterate it, the question came up. Managers are very professional, very busy professionals, typically A personalities, and just want to tell people what to do and expect things to be done. How does the effective manager communicate this without coming across in a negative way?
Correct. As managers, just pay attention. We have some other individuals on the line, and I'm sure they can contest. They've talked to managers, and they know when the managers are listening and when they're not listening. And just as a manager, give the attention that you'd want in return. Be conscious of that. And it's hard. Again, I'm going to reiterate, it's hard because most managers I've met, the large majority of us, are A personality off the chart. And when they're in front of you, they're focusing on something else. Bring them back. Focus on the conversation at hand. You'll spend less time at the task and you'll complete it more thoroughly moving forward.
Great. Okay, and there is one other question so far. What does your body language say about you?
So if you're fidgeting, if you're looking away, if you're fidgeting, if you're in your phone, if you're looking down and away, you're not engaged in the person. Your mind is somewhere else. And if you're talking to me and I see that, I know that no matter what I say is going in one ear and out the other, and it's never registering. It's telling me that you're just not engaged in the conversation, and maybe you're not interested, or you want to be someplace else, or whatever the case is. I just know that you're not interested. So body language is a lot. Be conscious of your body language when you speak with someone. Be engaged. Ask the question. Make sure you understand them thoroughly. You really want to be engaged with somebody when you talk to them. And the number one culprit I see is this. How many people are looking down at their phone or text? Oh yeah, I got you. No, I'm listening. Oh, okay. But really, they're more focused on the text message. That's the number one culprit that I see out there.
Thank you, Tony. Those are the only questions so far, but if anyone has questions throughout the program, please feel free to put them in the chat box and we'll come back to Tony. Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
Okay, next up we have Julie Neves. Julie Neves is the Director of Business Development and Sales for the Professional Restoration Company. Professional Restoration specializes in commercial and residential mold remediation, water and fire restoration, and rebuilds and construction. Today, Julie will be discussing mold remediation. Julie?
Hi, everyone. My name is Julie Nieves. Like Angela said, I'm with Professional Restoration. I'm the Director of Business Development. I've been with the company almost 7 years. I'm calling from my son Rocco's room. This is his bed making skills. I said, please just make your bed. That's the way it goes down in my house. So I'm doing this from home today. Like most of us, we are working from home quite a bit, and if we're not at home, we're at work. So I'm touching on mold today. Summer is the season of mold. Mold requires the right heat and humidity to grow. It requires food, an organic food. So I'm going to talk a little bit about sources of mold. And then we're going to talk about prevention, health issues. I'm going to touch on a little bit of everything, try to cover all the bases and the basics for all of you. Like I mentioned, summer is the season of mold. It requires the right conditions to thrive. Mold thrives in damp, wet, humid conditions. Most of us know this. You know, where do these water sources come from? Roofs, windows, utility closets, etc. Prevention. We need to stop the water infiltration first off. Make sure the water is directed away from your home. Fix leaks. Don't let them wait. If you have a loss, and most of the time if there is a loss, it's going to be a water loss. Those are the most filed claims. Report that claim, remediate properly, because if you don't and you have an issue down the road with growth, there's a chance it may not be covered. Most likely it won't be. That's a question for your insurance broker. Keep the environment clean and dry, humidity, dehumidifiers, clean fabrics, remediate after water loss, dry structure completely, reduce moisture, like I said, with BUs. Another really important thing to do is make sure the air ducts are cleaned. Mold will breed inside those air ducts, especially if they're very dirty. It likes that. Make sure you're using the proper commercial disinfectant. And always, if you're going to bring in a restoration company, make sure they are IICRC certified, which stands for Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, Restoration Certification. So like I mentioned, we're working from home and we're spending our time a lot there. So it's important to keep the air conditioning running, change your filters, clean your ducts. I did a webinar yesterday with a gentleman who is installing these UVC lights on air ducts. Kills the bacteria. It's a great option to install in your home. Remediate the mold immediately. Let's talk a little bit quickly about steps of remediation. I mentioned repair the water problem. When we come in, these are the steps that we would take. We're going to isolate the area. We're going to suppress the dust. We're going to remove any affected materials. We're going to remove them and properly remove them. Clean. Sometimes, depending on the situation, say we're removing drywall, insulation, and then we get to the studs, that requires some wire brushing, some cleaning. It has to dry properly, and then we encapsulate. HEPA vacuuming, sometimes, you know, depending on the severity of the mold, there's different protocols. And then obviously dry and replace. That's about it. I guess the thing I want to drive home for everyone in the business is that don't let these issues wait. Don't put a Band-Aid over it. Don't shampoo the carpet, slap some paint on the wall. Dry the structure out properly so you don't have an issue down the road. That is really, really important. If you have any questions for me, I'll share my information at the end. I'm happy just to give advice. or, help you out navigate any issues you may having at the time.
Okay, thank you, Julie. There are actually two
Sure.
questions. I don't know, you touched on this a little bit, but I don't know if you could add anything else. What can I do to prevent mold after water loss or a water loss flood?
Yeah, basically, call your insurance broker. Let's give an example of a water loss that's typical right now, and ways we can prevent it. So air conditions are running. Some of these units have HVAC units. They're in a utility closet. They have a condensate pan that runs under the HVAC that's supposed to, capture condensation. Often these aren't serviced properly. So setting up service plans for your community seasonally, summer and winter, to make sure those drains are cleaned. Those tend to back up. And overflow. And, don't just let it dry out and leave it alone. Make sure it's cleaned and dried properly. Then obviously fix the drain issue. So preventative measures, there's many of them, but most importantly, to make sure those building materials are completely dry and don't just leave them, because again, the mold will breed and thrive.
Thank you. And there's
Sure.
one other question. What type of mold is bad for you?
So mold is everywhere. It's outside, on trees, it's everywhere. Unfortunately, mold is a scary word for a lot of people to hear. And we tend to use the word growth a lot because people are scared when they hear the word mold, and managers tend to freak out when they hear the word mold. But mold is everywhere. Mold is growing on trees. It's everywhere. So it really depends on your susceptibility or your allergic reaction. People have different. For example, COVID. People are getting COVID. They're having mild symptoms. Some people are having severe symptoms. Typically, those are the people that have underlying conditions, respiratory issues, etc. So if you have a sensitive situation where you have an elderly resident living in a unit that has breathing issues, or maybe someone with a weakened immune system, most likely that mold is going to affect them differently. So people have different allergic reactions to mold, different sensitivities. So depending on the person's sensitivity, it should be rectified immediately. But so to answer the question, almost any mold can be, for periods of extended time, can cause health effects to people. But obviously you have your there's more severe types of mold that can make you very sick. And having a hygienist test, if you want to know exactly what kind of mold is present, that's something that you can do.
Thank you. Thank you, Jude. Those are
Sure.
the only questions. Just want to remind our attendees today, if you have any questions for any of our speakers, feel free to put them in the chat box and we will come back to those speakers. Thank you. Next up is Jessica. Jessica Marvel is currently a Vice President at National Cooperative Bank in the Association Banking Division. She is currently responsible for security loans and deposits for associations in New Jersey. She has over 12 years of experience in the association industry, including property management, executive leadership, and the banking sector. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, everybody. Can you see my screen, Angela? Everybody good?
We can.
Okay, hold on. So my name is Jessica Marvel from National Cooperative Bank. Today we're going to talk about using budgets and financial reports as management tools. This is a longer presentation, so I'm just going to condense it for the time that we have today. Just wanted to start out with a little bit of humor. We're in good shape. No one understands our financial statements. Our books are balanced. 50% of our numbers are real and 50% are made up. But in all seriousness, as a manager, you're taking your financial statements and using them as a management tool to explain to your board members and your membership at large. We're going to start with the sample income statement because I thought it was important to start out talking about variances because that's one tool that you can use with your boards to explain your financial statements. And if you see on this sample income statement, you have rental income and you have a month-to-date actual here of 0. And then you look over and you have a variance of $1,906. So that shows that you didn't book anything for, and this just happens to be for the month of February, that you didn't collect any rental income for the month of February. And you can look over and see your year-to-date variance of $3,812. So you're able to then take a look at your income and expense statement and first make sure that that money didn't get recorded in another income expense GL line statement. Or you can then go and take and be able to describe to your board members, you know, what the issue is, why the association didn't collect the rental income for January and February, and get ahead of the questions that your board members will give you when you give them this financial statement. And this is the expense statement section of your income expense statement. So you can see, take a look at repairs and plumbing, month to date, $871.50. So it's a variance for the month of $621.50. And you're going to want to be able to explain that to your board members, and you can use your general ledger to get additional information about that piece. And you can also use your income statement to look at your year to date as well to see where you are. So this is only February. So you can see as of February, there's a negative $12,823.22. So you can use your financial statements to be able to describe where your deficit for your year to date is coming from. I mentioned using your general ledger, and just look at the first example here, repairs and plumbing. And you can see exactly what invoices were paid to make up that $871.50. So when you're at a board meeting, you can then give them the details for that expense line item. Another helpful management tool, I think, using your income statement is explain your variances. Put together just a short paragraph explaining, you know, where was that $12,823 variance coming from? It'll give board members all the detail that they need, and then it'll cut down a lot of the questions that you'll get. So things to check, takeaways. Are the large variances explained? And this is also very helpful at budget time, because when you're budgeting, if you have large variances, you want to understand if they're going to occur next year as well, or are they just a one-time expense, so you know how to budget for that line item. Are your income and expenses correctly categorized? Are all of your reserve expenses categorized as reserves, or has something come into your operating statement that's a reserve and needs to be reclassed? And then especially, are the monthly budget spreads realistic? So for instance, let's take like a pool expense. You're typically going to spread a pool expense from the spring to the fall where you're going to incur those expenses. So if the expense is divided by 12 around from January to December, you're going to have months of your budget that are off. Okay, so budgeting. So different things you can use as management tools. You want to make sure that the membership and your board members have all the information they need. There's different types of assessments, timelines, assessment caps, special assessment restrictions, and capital contribution requirements. So sample requirements, most of the time for the budget, there's a time frame when the actual budget has to be approved. You want to make sure that everybody, the board members understand, and the membership, because you have to schedule a meeting. Transmittal of the budget, you want to make sure what the notice provision is to get the budget out to the membership. And is there any restrictions in regards to special assessments? So if you're creating your budget and you realize there's a shortfall and you're going to need additional funds, is there anything in the documentation, your declaration, your master deed that states you can only do a certain amount of a certain percentage of a special assessment before you need your membership vote? All things to keep in mind as you start your budget process. Other considerations, you want to make sure your variances are reviewed, your contract renewals, your utility charges. Is there any upcoming pending litigation that the insurance wouldn't be covered, that the association would need to reserve funds for? Bad debt, additional units coming into the community, and then reserve contributions as well, capital and operating. So as you're creating your budgets, you want to think about operating contingencies. So maybe you want to extend the pool season if the weather's nice through the end of September. So if you have additional funds saved for your operating contingency, you can use those, and those won't extend your budget. Operating reserves. Sometimes there's large scale projects that come up that we don't anticipate. I just used a large scale draining issue that I was just working on with a client. That wasn't included in the reserve study. So typically between about 10 and 20% of your annual assessments for your operating reserves. And then repair and replacements, make sure you contact your reserve specialist, had your reserve study updated regularly. And then I just created a short timeline here. July through August, you want to start reviewing the contracts, update reserve study if necessary. September 1st, typically draft budgets are due. And then September and October, you're holding your budget meetings and making owners aware. And then you have to adopt your budget, and then your notice provision, you have to make sure that you meet that to mail the budget to the owners. And then when you're doing your budget, find it helpful to provide some explanation on new budget items. So if you take a look at the first one, I just use this as an example, a $2,800 budget item. This is a new fee imposed, so based on an annual inspection. So if there's something in your budget that the membership hasn't seen before, just provide an explanation for it, so it will eliminate some of the questions. And then lastly, just be realistic. Use your budget as a tool as you're creating it for planning for the next year. If you're short on funds for improvements, consider the options, which are spending reserve funds, special assessments, loans, increase your regular assessment, vendor financing, or a combination. And what option is best? I mean, there is no option that's best. It depends on the community, and it varies depending on the financial condition, the size of the project, the type of the community, the demographics, and then the location and market dynamics. So you could also use a combination of sources to fund projects that you don't have the funds for as you're doing your budget. You can use a one-time special assessment, you can pay over a period of time via a loan, or you could fund a portion through your existing. So I just created a little example here for a $2 million facade project. We had a client that did a one-time assessment for $500,000. They took out a loan for $1 million, and then they used $500,000 for their existing reserves. And this limited the amount of the debt service payback that they had to put in their budget. And I just put a couple things. If you're considering a loan, I'm happy to talk to anybody offline about this. Consider the delinquencies, the number of rentals, how the current maintenance fee that you have compares to the rest of the neighborhood. Because if you have to increase your maintenance fee, you want to make sure that your association isn't priced out and that people are still going to want to reside there and purchase units. Age of the community, stable sales history, size of the maintenance increase, loan to value, and then reserve requirements. And then also professionally managed, review of a project plan, the historical financial performance of the community. Are you operating within your budgets, or are you overspending year over year and having to borrow money from your reserves to cover your operating? Curb appeal, strength of management staff, and then use banks that understand associations. That's all.
Thank you. There are a couple of questions, Jessica. The first one, how can managers use their income and expense statement to explain a monthly deficit?
Sure, hold on one second. So you can use to explain your monthly deficit by the variances. So you want to figure out what is causing those variances. And it could be something just as simple as an invoice got coded in February when it was supposed to be coded in January, and it didn't accrue to the correct month. Or maybe you had a water issue where you overspent by $500,000 in plumbing, and it got coded into February, and you only budgeted maybe $250, so you doubled the expenditure. So really focus on the variances and being able to explain those. And most of the time, it's something that's very easy to explain.
Thank you. One other question. What are the main factors I should consider for my association before I start the budgeting process?
Sure. Well, I think the main factors are you want to look at your contract renewals, and you want to get your expenses together before you actually start your budgeting process. Your pool expense, your landscaping expense, any other contracts that you have, so you have true numbers there. Because a lot of what you don't want to do is use numbers from the year before, and then you go out and do your contract negotiations later in the year, and there's an increase that you haven't budgeted for, and you haven't increased your monthly assessments.
Great, thank you. Those are all of the questions. I'd like to thank our speakers today and thank your attendees for viewing in today. If anyone has any other questions for our speakers, please feel free to email me. You can email at info@CAI-NJ.org. This session and all of our Wednesday webinars will be recorded. They're cataloged on our webinar library. Thank you for attending. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Be well.
Bye.